I was halfway through my shift when the first misalignment happened. The room was quiet, just the steady hum of the servers behind me and the soft clicking from Megan's keyboard on the other side of the glass. Greenville slows down after midnight, but the 911 board never truly sleeps. Calls come in waves. You get used to the rhythm. You learn to feel the pulse of a city through a screen. At 1:14 a.m., a new call blinked onto my console, standard format. Everything looked normal at first. Location, caller ID, and a note about a possible crash on I-85. I tapped the line to route it forward. Easy muscle memory stuff. But before my finger even left the screen, the call moved. It didn't drop. It didn't freeze. It shifted, slid sideways across the interface like someone else had grabbed control. Then, it vanished from the dispatch queue entirely. I frowned and pulled up the routing map. It should have shown which division the call landed in. Instead, I saw a number I had never seen before. A private line. No station tag, no district initials. Just a blank extension buried in some internal branch I didn't recognize. "Come on," I muttered, trying to pull the log before the system archived it. "Access denied." Another attempt. Same message. The system wasn't glitching. It was blocking me. I leaned back and stared at the screen, trying to convince myself it was a software hiccup. Greenville's system is old, half patched, half replaced, half working on a good day. But even then, calls don't reroute to private numbers, not on their own, not without clearance. I stood up and walked toward Lieutenant Rourke's office. Her door was cracked, a strip of light bleeding across the hallway tile. She looked up the second I knocked, eyes sharp, jaw tight. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice steady, "a call just jumped to an unlisted number. It's not in any of our division trees." Her expression hardened. "And why?" she asked. "Are you digging into routing outside your clearance?" "I'm not. The system. Stick to your station, Grady." She shut her laptop harder than she needed to. "If it's not your assignment, don't touch it. Don't ask about it. Don't bring it up again." The door closed in my face, not slammed, just firm, final. I stepped back, confused more than anything else. Usually Rourke barely looked at me. Tonight she acted like I had crossed some invisible line I didn't know existed. When I returned to my console, the call was gone. Not rerouted, not archived. Gone, like the system had scrubbed the entire event clean. No caller ID, no timestamp, no trace in the audit logs. For a moment, I sat there, listening to the hum of the servers, feeling the whole room breathe around me. The city was quiet. My screen was quiet. And somehow, that silence felt wrong. Most nights at the Greenville County 911 Center feel the same. The building hums with that low fluorescent buzz that never really stops, and the air always smells faintly like burned coffee and old carpet. For a while, I told myself the routine was good for me. Steady work, steady hours, steady paycheck. After years of bouncing from base to base in the military, stability felt like the one thing I couldn't mess up again. Tech support for the emergency system isn't glamorous, but it's predictable. You watch the board, check the servers, make sure the dispatch software doesn't freeze during a real emergency. Most of the time, I'm just a quiet guy behind a console, keeping things running while the actual first responders do the important stuff. And honestly, I didn't mind that. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just wanted to feel like a normal person again. Megan Alvarez made that easier. She worked dispatch on the same late shifts I did, usually in the glass room right across from mine. I could always hear her, soft clicking of nails on the keyboard, occasional quiet laughter when she heard something weird over the line, and the way she'd mutter, "Oh no, sweetheart," anytime an elderly caller got confused. She was good at the job in a way you can't teach. calm, sharp, steady. When things got chaotic, she never raised her voice. She handled drunks, panicked parents, domestic calls, all of it, smooth as breathing. For someone who looks like she should be teaching kindergarten, Megan has more steel in her than anyone I've ever worked with. Sometimes, during the slow hours, she'd talk through the glass so we didn't feel like two ghosts haunting opposite ends of the same room. "You ever think about getting out of here?" she'd ask. I'd shrug. Where would I even go? And she'd give that half smile, like she understood the question better than I did. Lieutenant Dana Rourke, on the other hand, didn't smile. Ever. She managed our division with the same warmth you'd expect from a malfunctioning vending machine. Always watching, always tired, always irritated. Her uniform was perfect, her hair never moved, and her voice could have cut steel when she felt someone was wasting time. If Megan kept the place human, Rourke was the part that reminded you this was a government building and everything you did was documented. She didn't like questions, and she really didn't like me after that rerouted call. I didn't understand why. Not yet. Most days were calm. A few fights, a few accidents, the usual noise. But a couple nights after the first misalignment, I started noticing the system doing things it had never done before. The first glitch was small enough to ignore. A call came in twice, 2 identical entries on my board with the same timestamp, like the system had panicked and hit copy-paste. I cleared one, but the other flickered for a moment before routing normally. Weird, but not impossible. The second one happened closer to dawn. A call rerouted to medical division for half a second, then jumped away before I could click it. The screen flashed red, a warning about a pending transfer, then went dark. When I pulled the log, the destination field was blank. I tried to mention it casually to Megan during our break, but she just stirred her tea and stared at the floor. "That happened again?" she whispered. "What do you mean again?" She didn't look up. "Nothing. Ignore me." She wasn't good at lying. I let it go, but the quiet around her felt heavier than usual. The third glitch hit really late, close to 3 a.m. A domestic disturbance call popped up on my screen, then shifted to a division code that didn't exist. It wasn't police, fire, or medical. It wasn't one of the smaller partner agencies Greenville sometimes shared data with. It was just wrong, a label I'd never seen. Then the call vanished entirely. I sat there with my hand still hovering over the screen, waiting for it to come back, waiting for anything to come back. But the board stayed empty, cold blue squares reflecting off my face like nothing had happened at all. That was when Megan pushed back her chair and walked over to my door. She didn't come inside. Dispatch is locked down after midnight unless you buzz someone in. But she stood there with her arms crossed, watching me through the window. "You saw it this time," she said softly. I nodded. She pressed her forehead gently against the glass, letting her breath fog a small circle. It was something she did when her nerves were shot. "I thought it was just me," she whispered, "but you saw it too." "Saw what? A glitch?" Megan's eyes flicked toward the ceiling like she was checking for cameras. "I don't think it's a glitch." That stuck with me. The tone, the hesitation, the way she forced herself not to say more. After her shift, she walked with me toward the elevator like she wanted to tell me something else. But when the doors slid open, she stepped back. "Tyler," she said quietly, "if it happens again, don't report it. Not yet. Then what do we do?" She swallowed hard. "We watch. That's it. Just watch. And when it reroutes again, we'll see where it goes." It wasn't a plan. It wasn't even good sense. But something about the way she said it, like she'd been waiting for someone else to notice, made it feel like the only real option left. So we agreed. Next reroute, next misalignment, next whatever it was, we'd follow it ourselves. Not because it was smart, but because both of us knew something in that building had started to shift, and neither of us wanted to be the one pretending it wasn't happening. The next reroute came 3 nights later. It was 1:17 a.m. when the board flashed, glitched, and blanked out, just for a breath. 1 second there was a call, the next second it vanished like someone had yanked the cord out of the server. My console froze long enough to make my stomach twist. Then my phone buzzed. A second later, Megan texted me. The signal came from mile marker 47 on I-85. Just go. No hesitation, no explanation, just the confirmation we'd been waiting for. I grabbed my jacket, swiped my badge at the back exit, and stepped out into the cold. The parking lot was dead quiet. That strange, humming kind of quiet, where even the air feels like it's holding still. I got in my truck and headed for the highway. The roads at that hour have a particular look, blacktop like poured ink, white lane markers glowing faintly under the sodium lights. Greenville disappears fast once you leave downtown. 1 minute you're passing gas stations, the next it's just trees, silence, and the occasional set of headlights that vanish as quickly as they show up. When I reached mile marker 47, I saw the hazard lights first. A blue sedan angled awkwardly on the shoulder, front left tire blown out. The driver, a girl who couldn't have been more than 19, stood beside it with her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to make her body smaller. Lily Vaughn. I didn't know her name then. I only learned it later. I slowed down, trying to get a read on the scene, and that's when I saw them, 4 officers. At least, that's what they looked like from a distance. 2 stood near the girl, draping a blanket around her shoulders. The other 2 were by the back of a black van, pulling something out of it, a jack maybe, or a toolbox. Their posture was stiff, their movements too clean, too deliberate. Even from 30 yards away, something felt off. They had arrived absurdly fast. There were no patrol units this close. Greenville County Sheriff doesn't keep cruisers sitting on empty interstate stretches at 1 a.m., but these guys were already here, already working, already synchronized. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I eased past them, and just as the nose of my truck lined up with the van, the 4 of them turned. Perfectly. Simultaneously. Like a choreographed move they'd practiced. Every head snapped toward me in the same exact fraction of a second. I don't know why that detail hit me so hard, but it did. Real people don't move like that. Not even trained officers. I kept driving, pretending everything was normal, pretending my pulse wasn't climbing into my throat. Half a mile ahead, I pulled into the next rest area, parked between 2 empty rigs, and killed my headlights. 5 minutes passed. Then the van appeared. It sped by with the girl's sedan trailing behind it. Tire magically replaced one of the officers driving it. They didn't slow down, they didn't stop. They moved as a pair of black shapes cutting through the night. I inhaled slowly, turned my key, and eased out onto the road again. I kept a generous gap, not hard when no one else was out here. But even then, it didn't take long to realize they knew. They had to. The way the van drifted between lanes, the sudden turns onto quieter roads, the unnecessary U-turns. This wasn't a route. It was a test. A maze designed to see if I would follow. I did. Eventually, the trees thickened, the highway gave way to cracked asphalt, and the streetlights thinned out until there were none left at all. The van made one last turn onto a narrow country road lined with old barbed wire fencing and fields that looked abandoned. Then it stopped. Sideways, blocking the path ahead. Before I could react, the sedan pulled out behind me, sealing me in. I tapped the brakes. My heart hammered so loudly I barely heard the gravel crunching under my tires. Then the doors opened. 4 officers stepped out at once. Again, perfect sync. No fumbling, no delay. Their boots hit the ground at the exact same time. They walked toward me with that same unnatural rhythm, each one carrying a flashlight and a maglite baton. Their shoulders rose and fell in unison. Their footsteps matched like a single echo. I cracked my window an inch. "What seems to be the problem, officer?" The voice came from the one closest to me, except it didn't sound like a voice. Something about the tone was wrong, filtered, flattened, as if a recording was being played through cheap speakers. The others laughed, and that laugh, not human, not even close. It had the cadence of a machine trying to imitate a chuckle, like someone typed laugh into a text-to-speech program and kept the default settings. My throat went dry. Up close, their uniforms didn't look right either. The badges gleamed too much, the fabric didn't crease, the stitching looked printed, not sewn. Then the nearest one leaned into the beam of his own flashlight, and I saw his face. Not a mask, not makeup, not even uncanny valley. It was a face that could have belonged to a real officer, square jaw, clean shave, neutral expression, but it was duplicated 4 times over. Same cheekbones, same smile, same slight wrinkle beneath the eyes, like someone had taken one human face and pressed copy until they had enough to staff a scene. All 4 stood there, staring at me with the exact same expression. "I think you're lost," the leader said, voice buzzing with static. "I'm fine," I whispered, "just passing through." He raised the baton and tapped it against my windshield, gently. A tiny tick. Not an attack, more like a warning. And then, all at once, they turned away. No signal, no word. Just pivoted in 4 identical movements, walked back to their vehicles, and climbed in. The van rolled forward. The sedan backed up. In less than 10 seconds, the road was clear. And they were gone, swallowed by the dark. I sat frozen until their taillights disappeared. Then I grabbed my phone. I texted Megan with shaking hands, telling her to meet me at the diner as soon as she could. Megan was already there when I arrived, her coffee untouched, her eyes wide and tired. She stared at me like she already knew what I'd seen. "Well?" she asked. I sat down slowly. "They're not officers," I said. "They look like it, but they're not." "What did they do?" "Nothing," I said. "And that's the worst part." She rubbed her forehead. "Tyler, every call that rerouted the last 2 months, none of those people were ever found, not one. Missing person reports, families calling back asking for updates, nothing matches anything in our database." I swallowed hard. "So it's a pattern." "Yeah," she whispered. "A bad one." We sat in silence for a long time. The diner was empty except for a bored waitress wiping the same counter over and over. Outside, a street light flickered. Finally, Megan spoke. "Every reroute," she said quietly, "means they show up. And someone disappears." We didn't say their name. We didn't have one yet. But we knew what they were. Or at least what they did. And that was the moment the pattern locked into place. I didn't even have a chance to sit down when I walked in for my next shift. Lieutenant Rourke was waiting beside my desk, arms crossed tight, shoulders squared like she'd been holding her breath for a long time. And she wasn't alone. 2 men in dark suits stood behind her. Internal affairs. The kind of people who don't blink unless it's in the handbook. Between them stood Marcus Lowell, black turtleneck, rimless glasses, expression blank. I'd only seen him once before, near the servers. But something about him had burned into my memory. Not his face, not his clothes, just the sense that he shouldn't have been there. A shape that didn't belong in the room he occupied. "Grady," Rourke said. "Conference room. Now." No explanation, no tone, no inflection, just an order. The IA guys flanked me like they thought I might run. One closed the door behind us. The other pulled out a chair and waited until I sat. Rourke didn't bother with introductions. "We've received concerning reports about you," she said. "What reports?" "Conduct violations, insubordination, unauthorized system access." My stomach tightened. "I haven't accessed anything unauthorized. That's not what the logs show." "What logs?" She didn't answer. Marcus Lowell did. His voice was soft, too soft. The sound engineers use when they want audio to feel neutral and non-threatening, which somehow makes it worse. "You probed restricted routing structures," he said. "You accessed logs outside your clearance. You interfered with internal transfers." "That's not true," I said. "I didn't touch anything I wasn't supposed to." Rourke exhaled through her nose like she'd been holding that breath for hours. "You're being relieved of duty," she said, "effective immediately." I felt the words hit physically, like a punch just under the ribs. "What?" "No, Lieutenant, badge, keycard, credentials. Put them on the table." The IA guy leaned forward. "Now." I placed everything down with shaking hands. Lowell watched me like a scientist watches an insect. No judgment, no empathy, just observation. When they escorted me out of the building, the hallway felt different. Quieter, colder, like the whole place had been waiting for me to be removed. By the time I stepped outside, I didn't feel angry. I felt hollow. I tried to sleep that night, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the girl on the highway, the 4 officers turning in perfect sync, the way their footsteps matched like duplicated audio. I told myself I'd talk to Megan in the morning, figure out what to do, see whether she was okay. But around 2:40 a.m., I heard it. A faint knock came from the window, one tap, then another, each one too careful to be random. I froze. Another tap followed. Same spacing, same measured rhythm, like someone standing just outside my bedroom glass was taking their time, waiting for me to move. I approached the window with my breath locked tight in my chest. I didn't want to look, but some part of me needed to see. I pulled the curtain back. 2 silhouettes stood on the other side of the glass. Uniforms, caps, perfect posture. Both raised a hand and waved. The exact same wave. My heart dropped into my stomach. I stumbled backward, grabbed the nearest thing, my old baseball bat, and ran out the front door to confront them. But when I reached the porch, they were already turning the corner at the end of the street. No footsteps, no engine, no sound. Just the faint reflection of their shapes under the streetlights before they vanished. I called Megan immediately. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. The only person who might still help, the only one who'd ever helped me, was Captain Riker. He lived across town in a quiet neighborhood full of big trees and bigger houses. I parked 2 houses down and walked to the porch, knocking softly even though it was late. The door opened after a minute. "Tyler, you all right, son?" Riker asked, voice thick with sleep. I don't know," I said. "I really need to talk to you." He frowned, then nodded and stepped aside. "Come in. I'll make tea." I sat on his couch, hands shaking, mind buzzing with everything that had happened. When he came back with 2 mugs, I took mine even though I didn't want tea. I just needed something warm to anchor my hands. "Tell me everything," he said. I opened my mouth to start, but the room tilted, just slightly, then more. My vision blurred. The mug slipped from my fingers. What did you?" I tried to stand, but my legs didn't obey. Riker watched me without blinking. "I'm sorry, kid," he said. "You were never supposed to see any of this." I hit the carpet face first. Everything went black. I woke up cold. Cold in a way that didn't feel like air conditioning or winter draft. Cold like stone. Cold like concrete walls far beneath the ground. My ribs burned with every breath. My head throbbed, and the smell, damp metal, mildew, bleach, hit me hard enough to make me gag. I wasn't in a room. I was in a cell, a narrow metal cage with rusted bars and a concrete floor. Something dripped steadily, water, maybe, echoing through a huge underground space. I grabbed the bars and shook them. They didn't budge. Then I heard it, a soft hum, mechanical, cold, familiar. The hallway lights flickered, footsteps approached, heavy even, synchronized. One of the copies walked by my cell. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge me, just tapped his nightstick once on the bars, clang, and kept walking. Another copy followed behind him, then another, each one tapping the bars as they passed, creating a rhythm that pulsed through the corridor like a heartbeat made of metal. My door clicked, unlocked. I didn't want to leave the cell. Every instinct told me staying inside was safer, but the lock slid back on its own, and I heard the whisper of movement behind me. I stepped out. The hallway widened into a large chamber. A pit stretched across the center, deep, wide, filled with shattered glass and thick steel cables hanging like webs. A maze designed to slow someone down, designed to make you crawl, designed to hurt. I didn't have a choice. Behind me, the copies formed a line, 4 silhouettes in perfect formation. They tapped their batons against the concrete, herding me forward like livestock heading into slaughter. I dropped into the pit. The glass sliced instantly. My feet, my hands, my legs. Every movement was pain, bright and sharp. I grabbed one of the steel cables and pulled myself across, trying not to look down. My blood made the line slick, forcing me to fight for every inch. Halfway through, a rubber bullet slammed into my ribs. The force knocked the breath out of me. I almost fell. Another bullet whizzed past my face, then another. They weren't trying to kill me. They were pushing me forward, guiding me. When I reached the far ledge, I collapsed. I barely caught my breath before tear gas hissed from vents above. My eyes burned instantly. My skin felt raw. I staggered blindly, coughing until my hand hit something soft. A body, then another, then another. I didn't look. I couldn't. A copy emerged through the fog, wearing a gas mask, tapping his baton against a rusted pipe. He was inches from me. Instinct took over. I lunged, grabbed his leg, and yanked. He fell. The baton clattered. I ripped the gas mask off and slammed it onto my own face. He thrashed weakly beneath me. I forced a knee into his chest until the movement stopped. No time to think. I tore off his uniform top, pulled it over my clothes, and stumbled into the next corridor. For a minute, the disguise worked. One copy stepped into the hallway, scanned me head to toe, then slowly tilted his head, disappointed, before walking away. I found a ladder and climbed, lungs burning, mask fogging with every breath. At the top was a shattered window overlooking dark woods. I didn't think. I jumped. Branches tore at my arms as I fell through them, crashing onto the forest floor. Pain shot up my leg, but I forced myself to run. Dogs barked behind me. Then hooves. I burst into a clearing. A mounted copy stared down at me, holding a white envelope. He tossed it at my feet. I opened it with trembling hands. Photos, my parents' house, my brother's apartment, an ex-girlfriend in her kitchen, recent, all of them. I looked up, shaking. "Why?" I whispered. No answer, just a needle sliding into my arm. The world tilted sideways and folded into darkness. I woke up on my couch, choking on my own breath. Not a startled gasp, not a nightmare jolt. It was worse, a full-body panic, the kind that comes from waking in the wrong place with the wrong memories in the wrong order. The ceiling above me spun. The room smelled like sweat, dirt, and something metallic that didn't belong. For a moment, I didn't even know where I was. My body ached in places I didn't think could ache. Deep bruises throbbed under my ribs, my wrists raw, my throat sore like I'd screamed for hours. I tried to sit up. Pain flared through my spine. I wasn't dead. That was the first thing I understood, and whoever brought me home wanted me to know that. My living room looked exactly the same as the night I left. TV off, blanket draped over the recliner, a half-filled water bottle on the table. Everything familiar enough to feel safe, except two things: the envelope and the folder, both sitting on my coffee table. The envelope, the same envelope the copy threw at me in the woods, lay open, the photos spread out neatly like someone wanted me to admire the arrangement. My family, my brother, my ex, people I hadn't seen in years, people who had nothing to do with any of this. But the folder beside it chilled me more than the photos ever could. Retirement package, stamped across the front in an official blue. No one my age gets a retirement package from emergency services. No one gets a pension for being fired. No one gets benefits without months of hearings and paperwork. This was a bribe, wrapped in the illusion of gratitude. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were documents already filled out. My name typed neatly across every line. A signature line left blank, waiting for me. A note clipped to the front, for your cooperation. I sank back into the couch, the room suddenly too small, too quiet, too aware of the invisible eyes that had to be watching. They didn't threaten me outright. They didn't warn me. They didn't need to. The photos were the warning. The pension was the demand. And the fact that I was still breathing was the message. They weren't finished with me. Not yet. I stared at the ceiling, trying to piece things together, trying to force memory fragments into something linear. The copies didn't kill me. They could have, easily. So why didn't they? Because they didn't know what I'd done. Did I tell anyone? Did Megan know more than she should? Did Captain Riker say something before he drugged me? Did one of the IA suits overhear something? They didn't know how much I'd told. They didn't know who I'd told. And the uncertainty, that's what kept me alive. For now. I pushed myself off the couch, limping toward the kitchen sink. I splashed cold water on my face, watching my reflection blur in the faucet. My eyes were bloodshot. My lower lip was split. There was a bruise across my jaw shaped exactly like a gloved hand. I barely recognized myself. I reached for the counter to steady my breathing, and it hit me all at once, like a sudden mental click, a lock turning inside my head. The rule. The thing that ties all of this together. I whispered it aloud, because hearing it made it real. Every rerouted call becomes a disappearance. My grip tightened, and the copies show up on every reroute. I closed my eyes. And the reroutes only happen because someone inside is giving them access. Marcus Lowell, the rimless glasses, the quiet voice. The man who shouldn't have been near the servers at all. He was the gateway, not the leader, not the creator, just the door. And Rourke, she wasn't controlling anything. She was being controlled. The way she reacted to my questions, the panic in her eyes when she told me to drop it, that wasn't anger. That was fear. She wasn't protecting herself. She was protecting someone else, or maybe protecting everyone by staying silent. The pieces kept sliding into place, and the more I understood, the heavier everything felt. I staggered back to the couch, sat down, and tried to breathe through the numbness crawling up my legs. They hadn't killed me because they weren't sure where the leak was. I was still part of an equation they hadn't solved, and until they did, I was useful, or at least not immediately disposable. I spent hours in that living room, staring at the door, waiting for another knock, another tap, another silhouette behind the glass. None came. But I knew better. They didn't need to come inside. They'd already been here. They'd already touched everything. They'd already shown me what they wanted me to see. I couldn't stay in that house. So at sunrise, I grabbed my keys and drove. Not away from Greenville, not yet. There was one thing left I needed to do. I needed to see Megan. She met me behind the old waterfront pier, where the city lights don't reach and the fog climbs low across the water. She hugged herself like she was cold, even though the air wasn't. I walked closer, and she didn't look up. "Are you okay?" I asked quietly. She nodded without meaning it. Her eyes were red, her voice small. "They questioned me," she said. "Who did?" "IA and someone else. I don't know who." My heartbeat stumbled. What did they ask? "Everything," she said. "About us, about what we talked about the reroutes, about the night you left the building." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "They took my phone, my notes, my login history. They asked if you ever told me anything you shouldn't have. What did you say?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I said no. You didn't have to lie for me." She shook her head hard. "I didn't lie for you, Tyler. I lied because I had to, because the man with the glasses kept looking at me like he already knew the answer. And I didn't know what they'd do if I said the wrong thing." The man with the glasses. Lowell. I stepped closer, but she took a small step back, so small I almost missed it, not because she was afraid of me, because she was afraid of being seen with me. "Megan, what did they tell you?" She swallowed. "That we shouldn't talk anymore." The words hit harder than anything the copies did. I felt my throat close. "So that's it?" I asked. "We just stop?" She lifted her head finally, her expression breaking in the dim light. They said it'd be best for both of us." Her voice cracked on the last word. We stood there in the silence, just two exhausted people on opposite sides of a line we never asked to be drawn. "Megan," I whispered, "I'm leaving Greenville." A tear slid down her cheek. "Good," she said. "You should." "Will you?" She shook her head before I could finish. "You can't come back here," she whispered. "Not for me, not for anything." I left her standing by the water. I didn't look back. I couldn't. By noon, I was 2 towns over. By evening, I crossed into a new state. By the next morning, I kept driving. I didn't tell anyone where I went, didn't call family, didn't check in with old friends. Because I knew the truth. The copies weren't tied to Greenville. But the system was. And as long as that system kept humming, as long as someone called 911 at the wrong moment, as long as Lowell kept his access, the reroutes would continue. And the disappearances would too. I didn't understand who built them, or why they existed, or how many there actually were. But I understood enough, just enough to run, just enough to stay quiet. Just enough to know this wasn't over. Not for me, not for anyone who ever made a call that landed on the wrong screen. 8 years is a long time to pretend you're someone else. Long enough to move twice, change your name on pay stubs, work jobs that don't ask questions. Long enough for the people who used to know you to stop trying to reach out. Long enough for the nightmares to dull from sharp edges into background noise. I lived cheap. Worked odd jobs, warehouse loading, late-night custodial, a little handyman work when I could get it. Kept my head down, stayed off anything digital that didn't involve clocking in. Most days the world felt distant, like I was watching life happen from behind thick glass. But I told myself distance was good. Distance kept me alive. Then last month, I got the diagnosis. The doctor didn't sugarcoat it. Didn't have to. The look in his eyes said enough. I walked out of that clinic and didn't stop moving until I reached the parking lot. I sat in my car with my hands shaking on the wheel, realizing something simple and terrifying. I didn't have much time left. And if the end was coming, no matter what I did, then maybe running didn't matter anymore. Maybe the only thing that mattered was telling the truth before someone else buried it with me. So I drove. I didn't head to Greenville, not yet. I wasn't ready to see the roads again, or the buildings, or the place where the world had split open under my feet. Instead, I stopped at a small roadside motel 3 towns over, a place where the neon sign flickers more than it shines. I checked in under a name I barely remembered creating. 2nd floor, end of the hall. I sat on the edge of the bed and started recording everything, every detail I'd held in for 8 years. The reroutes, the copies, Megan's silence, the woods, the bruise that never quite healed on my ribs, the retirement package still sitting in a locked box under my truck seat. I talked until my voice felt thin and frayed. When I finished, it was after midnight. The motel was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels staged. I closed the notebook, reached over to turn off the lamp, and heard it. A soft knock at the window, not loud, not rushed, one tap, then another, each one too careful to mistake for anything natural. My stomach dropped. The room felt smaller with each breath as I walked slowly to the curtain. The tapping continued, steady, patient, familiar. I pulled the curtain back. A street light flickered outside, casting a pale circle across the parking lot, and in the center of that light stood one of the copies. Same uniform, same posture, same exact smile I saw 8 years ago. He didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched me, like he'd been waiting for this moment as long as I had. My pulse hammered in my ears, my fingers curled against the windowsill. I thought I outran them. I thought 8 years was enough. I was wrong.